Welcome back, literary slummers, to another episode of Hate Read. I'm Anna.
And I'm Em. Occasionally, we challenge each other to read a book, but that hasn't happened for the last, 3 months, honestly. And some other times, we just revisit books that we know that we hated from our past. And that's what we're doing this fortnight. Anna has selected a book from her late high school, early college years to read. It is Mr. Darcy Vampyre by Amanda Grange. So first things first, Anna, why did you hate this book?
Well, for a lot of reasons, but none of them good reasons. So I think I hated it when I first read it because there was not enough vampire action in this book. And because of the decision that Elizabeth and Darcy make at the end. I absolutely hate that decision.
Yes. I didn't dislike this book. Is it the best book in the world?
Boring.
No.
It's so boring.
Is it kind of dumb? Yes. I didn't think it was boring. I was into it.
Oh my god. I'm judging you.
Again, not high literature, but it was, to me, a fun read. So I had fun reading it, but I can see why it would have bothered you. It's definitely pretty slow on the...
It's a snooze fest.
Well, maybe. I will also say it was barely Pride and Prejudice sequel, because these were not Darcy and Elizabeth, these characters. No. They were very OC.
And that's the other thing, okay, so I said in the last episode, I went through this phase where I kind of wanted to read. It wasn't just this one. I also read a couple, unofficial Dracula sequels as well. But I don't know why I was so interested in Pride and Prejudice sequels, because I read it once, and I liked it. I read the original once and liked it, but, I mean, I'm not in love with it. So I don't know what drew me to this genre at all. I don't know.
I think it's because I get that, because I really like adaptations of just anything, fairy tale adaptations, Pride and Prejudice adaptations, Shakespeare,
Romeo
whatever.
and Juliet adaptations,
except for that, Romeo and Juliet. But that aside, so I like the reading something where I know what the major beats are and seeing how someone plays in that space. I really find that fun. So to me, that's kind of the draw of any sort of adaptation or continuation or whatever. And there was some of that here. Obviously she kept referencing shit that had happened in Pride and Prejudice, but it just, the characters were so out of character. It was kind of and it's not a retelling, which is what I thought it would be. I thought it would be what if Pride and Prejudice, but the whole time Darcy was a vampire? It's a sequel.
A fan fiction.
Yeah, it was a fan fiction, which I guess is probably why I liked it, because it was just very fan fiction-y. Nothing really happened. It was just a lot of longing.
Yeah. If it was on AO3 or fanfiction.net, I probably would have enjoyed it, to be honest. But the fact that it was a printed book, I was like, this should be better.
And that's kind of thing, because I went into it with, because last episode, you talked about how it didn't, I guess, meet your expectations when you first read it. So I was very much expecting that this was going to end with Elizabeth killing Darcy or something. I thought she was going to go full on vampire hunter.
That would have been cool.
And it didn't. It would have been. So I was ready for that. But then it was just again, lots of longing and sexual tension. Like a fan fiction.
Yes.
So it was, I was oh, well, this is just very chill.
We don't even get a sex scene. Which is
disappointing. We do not, which is always a problem for us horny girls.
The wing quota must be reached. So, I don't don't know. I guess we
do you want to start talking about?
Yeah, we could talk about the plot of it a little bit. It's not that complex. There's just a lot of characters.
That's very true.
None of which I remember who they are.
Fair.
So the book opens. It's Elizabeth and Jane's wedding days. They're getting married to Darcy and Bingley, and they do. They start on their wedding tour.
If you guys haven't read Pride and Prejudice, just go watch one of the 1800 versions of it real quick, because we're not going to explain Pride and Prejudice, but you do kind of need to know what happens in that for this episode to make sense. Sorry, we usually don't require reading, but I feel like this one's pretty. You should have come across it at some point in your life. So,
yeah, or just read the Wikipedia synopsis. Honestly, that's probably also
fine.
There
you go.
So she and Jane promise to write to each other every day or whatever, and she writes to Jane constantly throughout their wedding tour, but never hears back from her. Which you'd think she'd be a little more alarmed by that, but she was not.
Well, I think that's kind of like 1800s mail. It's not that's very, true.
Not very, what is the word?
Reliable?
Well, and then here's my question, I guess, is how do they know where to send the mail? Where she's like, okay, I'm going to, write to me back at this address, and then they leave, 2 days later. Do they is it constantly just mail forwarding there?
I think it's mail forwarding. I think it's how it works. That, they send it there, and then they're like, oh, they've already left for the continent, and then send it on to the continent. And this is going to be filled with really bad accents, by the way.
Just they throw it into the channel. They're like, ugh.
Yeah, and hope for the best.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what happens at one point, is she throws it out a carriage window and hopes for the best, so.
Yeah. Which, she must have been really trapped for a very long time, because she was able to write out that whole letter, and then, we'll get there.
It's a long ride.
And then also I wanted to bring up the fact that, okay, so Elizabeth and Darcy are married, but she keeps calling him Darcy even though they're married. Is that a thing in the book where he's like, only call me Darcy, even though that's also your name now?
That's not ever mentioned in Pride and Prejudice. This is the other thing. I think, like I said, there was a lot of stuff that I was like, okay, I get the reference there, but some of it I was like, have you read Pride and Prejudice? Because the other thing that drove, and I wasn't gonna bring this up right now, but I guess I'm gonna. The other thing that drove me absolutely fucking insane was how much every single person they met was like, oh, Elizabeth, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful.
God, I know.
Elizabeth, oh, Darcy, she's so beautiful. What a beautiful wife you have. And I was like, that's specifically in the book that, she's not.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not ugly, but, they mentioned many times that Jane is the great beauty and she's, just kind of pretty. Yeah, but everyone's, so hyped on Elizabeth.
It's true, yes.
Calm down.
Yes, it's no one has ever seen a young woman before. And then they're also
no.
When they, at another part in this where they're hanging out with Darcy's friends or whatever, they're like, we love a new bride. And I'm like, what does that mean?
The 1800s were weird. They didn't have TV. They got excited about strange things.
They didn't have a lot going for them. So originally they were supposed to go to the Lake District for their wedding tour, but instead at the last minute Darcy's like, let's go to the continent, and Elizabeth's like, all right, I've never been. So they go to various locations, meeting with Darcy's friends. They go to Paris. That's where they start. She meets people, doesn't really like Paris too much. And then they decide.
That's how it always goes, is that she goes to a place, she's like, oh, it's beautiful and lovely and I love it. And then 2 days later, she's like, never mind, I fucking hate it. And I'm like, girl, you're so hard to please.
This is true.
Every single place they go, at first she's like, how beautiful it was, how much I love to walk along the streets. And then oh, I loved the food, I loved all the garlic, I loved the bread. And I'm like, okay, calm down.
And then 2 days later, she's like, this place fucking sucks, let's go back to England.
Sucks, I hate it, I want to go home.
I'm homesick. And then Darcy's like, well, what if we went somewhere else instead of home?
Somewhere else that's not home. They weren't communicating very well.
No, they really weren't. They weren't communicating at all. They just talked about art and shit.
Yeah, highbrow conversations.
Yes. That they had when they weren't supposed to be dancing together.
Yeah.
That's so weird to me, I guess. I don't know why that would have ever been like a social norm, is that you were not allowed to dance in public with your partner.
I think because, like, then that's all you would do, maybe? So
well, yeah, why would you want to touch strangers? Everyone smelled bad.
A lot of dances you don't touch, though. You just, like, hold your hand in front of their hand. Especially the English dances. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, where they just, like, stare ahead and march in straight lines or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, she doesn't get along with people in Paris. Or, I mean, they're nice enough to her, but she doesn't feel friendly towards them. So, I think she's starting to feel bummed out, and Darcy's like, well, let's go through the Alps and visit my uncle who is a count, and he lives in a castle. Won't you love that? And she's like, well, yeah, I guess I've never seen the Alps before.
Because if there's one thing we know about Elizabeth Bennet is that she loves fancy people and royalty 100%. And titles. Like, that's canon.
Yep, 100%. She's just like her mother. They ride through the Alps. They stay at an inn, and where they're confronted by Lady Catherine, who she shows up with dragging poor Anne along, and she's like, I don't approve of this marriage. You should never have done this. I hate it. Blah, blah, blah. And Darcy's like, fuck off. And she's like, whatever. And she leaves. So we start to get hints that, like, people don't approve of Elizabeth and Darcy's marriage, but we don't really know why. Well, like, we know why Elizabeth thinks it's so, but as the reader, you're like, that's not it, because this book is called Mr. Darcy Vampyre.
Yeah, I was going to say, we also know why, because it's very clearly stated on the front cover. It's because he's a vampire.
A vampire with a Y.
Which every time that's written, I always pronounce it in my head as vampire.
Vampyre.
Yeah, that would also... I feel like that's the one with no E at the end, though.
Oh, yeah. And I always imagine them as being, like, really gross and ugly looking, like, desiccated corpse looking.
Yes. This entire time I was just picturing a mummy riding around the French countryside.
Remember that creepy
mummy? It's amazing she didn't figure it out sooner.
Remember that creepy mummy from Courage the Cowardly Dog?
No. I watched one episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, and it freaked me out, so I refused to ever watch any more. I was Courage the Cowardly Dog. No,
you were more cowardly than him, because he saw through all of these confrontations.
No, he's forced to. I, as a child, was not forced to watch the TV show, and therefore did not have to. You cannot tell me if Courage was given the option, he would not have dealt with any of that shit.
I mean, that's probably true.
It's only because the old lady who he loves is in
Muriel.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, that show is so creepy. I don't know how that was, like, billed as a children's show. I don't know.
Because it was animated, and all animated things are for children. Didn't you know?
Clearly. Where are we in the stupid book? Oh, they go to the... Okay, so
the Alps.
Yes, they're in the Alps. They make it to the creepy castle where the Count lives, and there are no mirrors there because obviously he is a vampire. And the castle is kind of run down, and Elizabeth doesn't like it at all. And Darcy's like, oh, I thought you'd love this place. I'm sorry. I guess we'll stay for a few days to be polite and then leave. And she's like, okay. But the Count, like, goes and gathers some of his friend vampires. Well, we don't know they're vampires, but they're probably vampires.
We do.
And they have a party, and they all love Elizabeth because she's just so beautiful. But then a mob attacks them there, and they have to secretly flee. Darcy and Elizabeth. Those two get out. I guess everyone else stays. But the Count's like, you have to leave.
Elizabeth's just like, oh, French Revolution. Everyone hates aristocrats, I guess.
Yeah, she's, like, totally chill with this. Like, it doesn't even bother her at all.
She's like, yeah, this makes sense. This tracks.
Yeah. I guess this is what I have to get used to now that I'm married to a Darcy.
Now that I'm married to a rich man.
And, the Count's like, you have to get Elizabeth out of here because they're not going to like her. And Darcy's like, okay.
Was that ever explained?
No. They never explained, who this was that was actually attacking or why, what their motivation was. Like, I kind of thought that maybe it was, like, it was the the big bad vampire guy came and attacked, but I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. Like, if they were just like regular town people and she was the only human, you'd think they'd be like, oh, we have to save her, and then they would love to see her there. I don't know.
Maybe what he meant by what was his exact wording? Because maybe it wasn't like they're after, or like they want to kill Elizabeth. Maybe it was just like they're after Elizabeth or something. So like that's
they say something like they won't like seeing her here or something.
Yeah.
Let me see. I closed the book. He says, "Get her away from here. It is her they will not stand for."
Yeah. So like maybe he means like, oh, it's they won't. I don't know. It's very weirdly phrased.
Yeah, and again, never followed up. Like, they're just like, okay, that was an adventure.
Yeah, that's never explained.
Yeah.
I think also it's important to note at this point that this is when it's revealed to us that Elizabeth and Darcy haven't fucked yet. Because that's like a major plot point.
Yeah, he has not touched her. And she thinks it's because he doesn't love her anymore. But really it's because he's afraid that if they have sex, she might turn into a vampire. Which, I don't know. Is that
may or may not be a feature of vampires in this world. It's never clear.
No, it is never clear. It's never verified.
Because, again, he's like, when this is eventually revealed, he's like, oh, yeah, someone told me that, like, if I have sex with you, that you might become a vampire. And I'm not sure if that's true. So, like, they might have just been trolling
Yeah, seriously.
him.
They might have just been trying to ruin his marriage. Which, I mean, it worked. To some extent. Who's to say? Because they also reveal that, like, oh, each vampire family has a different weakness. Like, some are weak against the cross, and some are weak against garlic. Darcy's... So the sex thing probably, I don't know, it could have only been applicable to one family. But also, Darcy's weakness is that he can't go out at sunset or sunrise. Because he will turn translucent.
Which is... Okay, sure. I don't want to ever hear anyone complaining about Twilight sparkle pyres ever again, because yes, those are dumb, but this is a lot dumber.
It's I wonder if he, like, you know those, like, models that you used to have in science class where it was the transparent body and you could see all the veins and stuff inside of the skeleton? That's what I was imagining it was like.
I think, because he does go out at one point. I don't know. They describe it and she's like, oh... I pictured it more like they had just kind of, like, he was in Photoshop and they had turned him kind of translucent, you know? Like, so just all the way through.
Turn the opacity down.
Yeah.
Well, and then they said that also, like, if he stayed out in the sunrise or sunset for too long,
he would just be translucent
would lose
forever.
A part of himself. Yeah. Which, cool.
Yeah,
I would so pretend to be a ghost forever.
We did not get into... Well, because she says at some point, she's like, she felt like in the 5 seconds that this becomes important to the plot where they're briefly out at sunset or whatever, she says, like, she felt that if they stayed out any longer, he would become, like, she wouldn't be able to, like, her hand would go through him. Which, yeah, that would be kind of a bummer, I feel.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like,
a little bit.
He wasn't using it anyway, so, like, who cares if he has a what's the word I'm looking for? Not see-through, but, like, feel-through.
Feel-through?
Is there a word for that?
Like, she could phase through, or he could phase through her? I don't know.
Yeah. Which,
feel
I mean,
through.
honestly,
I like feel-through.
That might be better for them, because, like, here was the complaint I had about his whole, oh, we can't have sex because it might turn you into a vampire. Like, I don't know, try oral, man. Like, come on. Like, do something.
Nah,
so I don't know, that might have worked better for their sex life if he was just, like, magically feel through.
What? We could only have sex for these 8 minutes while the sun is setting. Anyway, they cross the Alps on muleback.
Oh yeah, all of that stuff doesn't actually happen for several chapters. Sorry.
Oh my god, yeah, no. He doesn't even reveal to her that he's a vampire until, like, the book is 90% over. Which,
Yeah,
at that point, like, whatever.
Who cares?
No one cares anymore.
I was half expecting for it to be like what's the other Jane Austen one? Is it Northanger Abbey? Where, like, the whole thing is Catherine being, like, thinking that all of these kind of penny dreadfuls are, like, real, and that there's some, like, dark secret to the house, and then it turns out she's totally wrong, and it's just because she reads crazy books and she needs to, like, chill on the imagination stuff. Like, I was kind of expecting it to be that ending, where, like, Elizabeth gets all worked up and is like, oh my god, my husband's a fucking vampire, and then at the end Darcy's like, of course I'm not a fucking vampire, I'm just, like, worried about, like, premature ejaculation, like, calm down.
I have a very specific war wound. That would be good. I'd read that.
Right?
Again,
that would
two ways this book
so
could have been
funny.
better. So, and I think that I feel like they really downplay the fact that they crossed the Alps on muleback for several days. Like, after this trauma of having to flee from this castle where a mob was attacking, they don't get to, like, change or bathe or sleep nicely. These are like people of leisure.
Her hair's messed up when she gets to the inn. I mean, they mention it.
It's tangled. Yeah, and she, like, probably looks sweaty a little bit.
But still beautiful.
Of course, she's ravishing. So they cross the Alps, and then they're in Venice, well, Italy, and they travel to Venice, and they have fun there for a while. There's a masked ball in Elizabeth's honor, and she meets some people that we find out later are vampires, and a strange man kind of hypnotizes her until Darcy intervenes. And she, like, doesn't think anything of it. It's like, I had this moment where, like, it felt like the walls are melting, and I wanted to do anything this man said, and I, like, you know, felt like I was leaving my body, but then I fainted. Everything was normal. Like, she doesn't freak out about anything at all. This girl is so, like, I don't know.
I think it was the author's attempt at having her be, like, kind of pragmatic, which she kind of is in the original book, but, like, it just comes across as, like, really fucking dumb. Like...
Yes. Like, to me, pragmatic would have been, like, telling your husband.
Right.
But
he doesn't want to have sex with her, so, like, can she even trust him, though?
That's true. Like, honestly.
He might not love her.
He might not love her. His wing certainly doesn't.
Yeah, so, you know.
There were, like, negative wing-wings in this book.
It
because
really...
of how many times they mentioned there was no sex.
Yeah, like, there was a lot of... And there were a lot of, that fanfic... That, like, again, very fanfic-y scene where they're, like, somewhere together and alone, and Elizabeth's like, Darcy didn't even want to touch me, and it was so upsetting, and I heaved my bosom at him, and then Darcy's, like, biting his lip and being, like, tracing her face with his hand and, like, just, like, feeling all over her neck, and clearly wants to fuck her, but, like, won't, and it's all very tensiony, and, like, Elizabeth's just there with her heaving bosom, and he's just there staring at her neck longingly, and Elizabeth's just like, oh, why doesn't he want to fuck me? And it's like, well, honey, he do
have to tempt him.
Yeah, you have to tempt him, Elizabeth, by getting naked in a lake. That was the thing that happened in this book. Don't worry about it.
Poor thing. I mean, she does try. I have to give her points for that. She does try. And also, she does a lot of, like, baring her neck to him before she realizes he's a vampire.
And after.
Which, that was... Yeah, and after. Which I was like, clearly she wants to be turned, so just fucking turn her. Explain to her afterwards. I will end super well. I've read Bitten. I know. It will end well. So they have fun in Venice, but then after a while, Elizabeth's like, he still don't want to do me, so now I'm sad. But they get an invitation from a prince, an Italian prince of some sort, to stay at his villa. So they accept his invitation, and they go to there. And I don't know. There are like some parties, but I don't think I was skimming this part. I don't think Elizabeth enjoyed it. Mostly because she was worried about not being sexed.
Again, she liked it at first, but then grew bored and weary of it. So, like, the same thing that had happened 8 times already.
Yes. This is literally just like scenes of someone's vacation. Like, they're showing you their pictures, and you're like, I don't care anymore. I didn't care after like the first 3, and there's only so many nice things I can pretend to say about your vacation I didn't go on. That was my experience reading this book. So Elizabeth decides to leave. But she confides in the prince before she does, because he's like, consider me a friend because you have none. And she's like, all right, here are all my woes. And he goes, yeah, you should leave. Here's my carriage. Go. Just leave. He'll be fine. Leave your stuff here. I'll send him on. Just go.
He's like, he definitely doesn't love you. He was in love with the idea of you because of, like, I was like, this is so, like, even if I was having marital issues, it's just funny because, like, I'm not married and probably never will be because it's gross. But sorry, that was rude. No, but like for me, even if I was having marital issues and like I was like complaining to someone and they were like, oh yeah, your husband definitely doesn't love you and probably never did love you, but just was in love with like the chase. So like you should leave him. I'd be like, we've known each other for 5 minutes. You need to stop. Like, this is incredibly rude. Like,
yeah, because then you become that friend that when they get back together, they're like,
yeah,
I know you hate us and now we can't be friends.
Right. Never, ever, ever say that you dislike your friend's significant other, even if they've broken up like 3 months ago.
Unless it's like they're hitting her.
Yeah, him. Then you can say it.
So she's having this conversation with the prince, and her handmaiden, Annie, interrupts their conversation super awkwardly. She like runs up to Elizabeth and then sees she's with someone, and she's like, ma'am, I left your handkerchiefs in your valise? How do you say that word? I don't know. Valise. Bye.
Which I think I only know because I think it's a lyric in Master of the House, I think.
Don't get that song stuck in my head, please.
Master of the House.
Oh, it's too late. There it is.
There we go. It's in there.
Anyway, the whole point of the Annie conversation was that none of Elizabeth's letters were ever sent to Jane. They were betrayed by a footman who I guess was working for the big bad vampire that wants to have sex with Elizabeth or something. I don't know.
And Annie had found the letters and put them in her valise.
Yes, and that was her awkward attempt at delivering a coded message. Elizabeth still gets into the prince's carriage, though. Obviously, it was a trap. She's delivered to this super old vampire who was the one who tried to hypnotize her at the masked ball. And he's super gross, and he's like, it is my right to have you as a new vampire bride. You should have come to me on my wedding night so I could have had my way with you.
Which, again, there's gross. Like a lot of sex talk in this book for there being no sex, which is kind of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like if you're at the point where you're having an ancient vampire threaten to straight up rape a woman, like, the least you could do is have a good sex scene in there, like, to make up for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, not just they became one.
Yeah, that was a disappointment.
That's so lame. So lame. But then also, like, equally gross, though, is that Darcy, he shows up and he's like, no, she's mine. And the old vampire is like, I don't smell you on her. And Darcy's like, I claim her. She is mine. She belongs to me. and so Elizabeth's just like, yeah, I dig this. And then they fight, but it is the vampires fight, but it is a bad fight scene. I don't really know what happened in it. It's one of those scenes where they're like, and then there was some whooshing and some other stuff, but suddenly Elizabeth and Darcy were away and completely 100% safe. They killed the vampire somehow. It'll be a couple years before he's back around, which again makes this last decision in the book even stupider because now they're going to protect themselves when he does come back around.
Well, they'll just have Georgiana do it for them.
Oh, that's true.
Because she's still a vampire.
Buff girl. See, yeah, so maybe she can just, like, turn them again when they decide. Oops, I spoiled it. Maybe.
Which can... also, though, Darcy... Okay, so we finally get, like, the backstory of, like... Well, not quite. Okay, just... Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, this is basically the next big thing that happens, is they escape to a hunting lodge, and Darcy, like, reveals the truth about how he was a vampire, how he became a vampire, how he was turned, him and his sister were turned during the bubonic plague by Lady Catherine.
Right. Which, like, his whole thing is that he's, like, when he's telling the story of what happened, he's like, oh, Lady Catherine... Like, essentially his sister had the plague, so Lady Catherine, who was a vampire, was like, I'll save her if you want. And he's like, okay, but you gotta turn me too, because I promised our mother that I would never leave her, and I have to, like, be a vampire, because if she can never die, I can't die. So that's the rule. And Lady Catherine does it, but then we get into this whole part where he's like, I don't want to be a vampire anymore because of Elizabeth. And I'm like, but your sister is still a vampire, and the whole reason that you was, like... That's never going to be resolved. Like, we're not going to talk about it or mention it in any way. Like, he's not even, like, hesitating. He's just like, yeah, definitely don't want to be a vampire anymore. Fuck Georgiana. I got someone to have sex with now. Like, okay.
Exactly. He did it all for the nookie. I didn't even think of that plot point. But yeah, poor Georgiana. He's just going to, like, come home to Pemberley and be like, sup, I'm a human. And she's going to be real sad.
She's gonna be like, oh, well, I thought we were doing this, like, together. Okay, I guess that's cool. I mean, you didn't, like, even ask me first, but I guess that's cool. Like, I'm eternally 15 years old, but, like, that's cool, what you've got going on with the not doing that. Like, that's all right, I guess. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, Darcy. Because she probably calls him Darcy, too.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a name.
Brother Darcy. No. And, like, also, he was like, well, I don't want to turn Elizabeth because I don't want her to have to, like, live through all of her loved ones dying and shit. But now he's putting Georgiana through that.
No downsides to this.
Exactly. That was going to be my question to you.
100% would do. 100%.
Yes. Except that maybe you can't go out at sunrise or sunset. But
or
like,
you don't
if
like
your
garlic much.
Husband and all your friends know you're a vampire, then that's
like,
cool.
That's fine. This is, like, usually in these sort of, like, scenarios, you know, in books where there's a vampire situation and they have a loved one who maybe wants to be a vampire, maybe not. They're like, oh, you wouldn't want to be a vampire because you have to murder someone, because your immortal soul will be, like, no longer existent, because, like, it's terrible. And, like, no, like, first off, they don't drink. I don't know. They never explained what he does to live, because he's like, she's like, oh, do you drink blood? And he's like, nah, some vampires drink blood, but there's a choice, and I don't drink blood. I'm like, well, then what do you do? Like, what makes you a vampire?
Then what do you do?
What is this? And then, like, so they don't have to drink, they don't have to kill people.
And he just eats normal food.
Yeah, he's fine with just food, apparently. Yeah. So they don't have to kill people. And the immortal soul thing, which, like, gets into the do we have souls thing, but that doesn't seem to be an issue here, because, like, the church thing doesn't really affect them, really. So it's not, like, a religious thing. And he never brings it up. He's never like, oh, you'll be damned for all eternity or anything like that. He's just like, nah, man, it's just not very cool watching people you love die. I'm like, but humans have to do that, Darcy. Like, that's part of life, buddy. Like,
yes. Do you not realize?
Everyone dies, except you didn't have to.
You fucked up, Darcy. You should have stayed a vampire.
There were literally no downsides to being a vampire in this world. They all just party all the time and have a million friends.
That's why I hated this.
I'm like, this seems great. What are
just
you
fucking
doing?
live forever. And you know what? Now there's going to be a lot of backlash because, okay, well, to get to this plot point, so then they go through this ritual and Darcy becomes a human. Whatever. she's gonna have all this backlash now in the relationship from all of her vampire buddies who are probably gonna be like, but Darcy, now you're gonna die. That sucks. We all love you. So now the vampire community is not gonna accept her, and like
all those friends she made, they're gonna hate her now.
Just become a fucking vampire. Pretty much, she stole Darcy from them in more ways than one.
And Georgiana's gonna be real pissed about it. Georgiana, 100%, they're gonna go back to Pemberley, and Georgiana's gonna sneak into their room at night and fucking bite them. Like, that's 100% what's gonna happen. She's gonna be like, no, fuck this, I'm not doing this.
I hope so. I hope that there is a way to undo this undoing, because I think Darcy's gonna come to regret it. Like, once he starts getting, like, his first wrinkles or gray hairs, he's gonna be like,
this was so dumb of me.
Turn me back.
I want to turn into a bat again.
I'm not ready to go.
I can't even fly anymore. This is so lame.
This sucks. I used to be able to move super fast and punch things super hard, and now it, like, hurts to lift my teacup, man.
Also, can I just say that this whole idea of Georgiana, because I assumed it was just Darcy who was a vampire going into this, not the case, and that he had been, like,
it's literally everyone. Elizabeth
like,
is a vampire.
But so... if Georgiana was a vampire, why was the Wickham thing even a problem? Like, what? Like, they get married. Like, because in the original book, Wickham tries to, like, elope with Georgiana and is foiled by Darcy, right? Because he's after her fortune. It's like, she's an immortal vampire, just eat him, number one. Number two... even if they did end up married and she was like, no, I don't want to eat my husband, that seems crass. Like, okay, just, like, deal with it for 80 years. Who cares?
She's gonna outlive him.
She'll be fine. Right. Like, this is a short-term problem.
Get his money.
This is a short-term problem for which has a long-term solution, and that he will die. Like, that is...
yeah.
Jeez.
And knowing him is probably gonna be sooner rather than later. Like, it would probably be, like, 30 years, tops.
I like the twist in this where after Darcy tells Elizabeth everything, Lady Deborah shows back up with Anne while Darcy's out of the house and is like trying to warn them about it, about the whole prince thing, which has already happened and they've dealt with it. And she's like, tell me where Darcy is, you insolent girl. And Elizabeth's like, I don't know. And then Anne's like, yo, Wickham fucked you guys. Like, and I'm like, what? I literally burst out laughing because I was like, why is Wickham even involved? Why do we I get that Wickham's like the big bad of the Pride and Prejudice universe, but like he's not in this case. There are actual vampires trying to eat them. Why is Wickham involved? Like, because the whole thing is like Wickham.
Oh, there's like nothing that would suggest he even knows about vampires.
So like Wickham is like overhears, or no, he's talking at like a pub and is like, oh yeah, I just married, or like Mr. Darcy is now my like brother-in-law because I'm married to Lydia Wickham and her sister is married to Darcy and blah blah blah. And like someone overhears that who is the prince and like is like, what, Darcy married someone? I gotta go fuck his wife. But, like, Wickham didn't know that guy was a vampire. Like, why would it... He didn't do anything wrong in this case. He was just talking about his family members.
Really, he didn't do anything.
Nothing, but they're like, Wickham has betrayed you again. Yes. I'm like, in what way? Wickham did nothing wrong. Hashtag Wickham did nothing wrong. In this case.
This is true. Oh my gosh. He was just talking about his family and like, how would he know that there was anything to be feared from an evil
He's probably sitting in this
vampire.
pub like, man, I'm so pumped to be related to Darcy. We were childhood friends. And now we're like, maybe we can repair this relationship after all this time. I fell on some hard times and made some bad choices, but I really want to turn my life around. And this like guy overheard him and is like, guess I'll go eat his wife then. And Wickham's like, just not even aware. It's not Wickham's fault. He's doing his best. Also, so many things to talk about in this book. Also, I want to point out, so like, because Elizabeth's like, when the reveal happens, she's like, wait a second, like, how do you maintain this facade? And he's like, okay, basically what I do is I pretend to be the owner of Pemberley, and then every like 15 years, I pretend to die, and then I come back as like the heir, like a cousin or something. And in this case, I had a small child who was like one of my cousins on the Fitzwilliam side pretend to be me growing up, which like So that's actually the kid that, like, Wickham knew as a kid. So no wonder Darcy fucking hates him, because he's like, yeah, I never even interacted with this guy.
Yeah.
Like, Wickham and Darcy don't know each other. There's some other fake Darcy running around who was best friends with Wickham as a kid. And it's like, man, things have really gone wrong in their life.
I didn't even put that together.
Like, what happened to this fake Darcy? Where is he now?
You know what? I feel really bad about
I
Wickham
know,
now.
right?
I want a story from his point of view where he's just like accidentally
Like,
fucking everything
in this
up
universe.
for everyone around him, and he has no way of knowing how or
In
why.
this universe, though. And he probably had a conversation with, like, fake Darcy that was like, hey, you know what? You should marry my sister. Like, I bet that happened. Like, he was like, you know what would be great if we were really brothers? Like, man, too bad that can't happen. And fake Darcy's, like, knows that that can't happen because he's not the real Darcy. But Wickham interprets it as, like, oh, man, what if I married Georgiana? Like, he's my best friend. He'd
He'll
love
love
if
that.
I did that. Like,
He'll
all
love
of...
it.
All of the bad decisions in Wickham's life came from fake Darcy.
Poor Wickham. Aw. He just
Poor
needs a
Wickham.
hug.
He's the real
needs a
victim
hug.
here.
Uh,
Oh my god.
yeah. Oh, and then they have sex. They become one on the beach. That's the end
Which
of the
is
book.
like the last line of the book proper, and then we get an epilogue.
Yeah. Where, okay, also, like, I want the scene, because this was not included at all, I want the scene where Jane, like, is freaking the fuck out because
It's
she
like,
hasn't heard from
what the
Elizabeth
fuck?
in
Yes.
months. And then they just, like, show up at home, and I want her to, like, rush in and be like, where the fuck were you? We didn't get that scene.
No,
I was
because
cheated.
that would actually be terrible, because Elizabeth would be like, Elizabeth in this version would be like, oh, Jane, I'll tell you maybe one day. Wink.
Wink.
Because she's fucking annoying. Like, and Jane would be like, no, but actually I was worried.
Yeah, Jane's like, actually, this is not a laughing matter, but it had already, like, faded to black and the credits were rolling, so what could she have done?
Right.
Oh, so that was a stupid, boring book. I hated it. 1 star.
Which, again, I had fun reading it.
Well, I'm so happy for you. That's okay, because I had, well, no, because you had fun reading Hogfather, too. Well, whatever.
Yeah, I've been having a good couple, I mean, we had Christmas shoes in there, but aside from that, I've been having, like, a good month or so.
Yeah, I'm pretty
And
salty
I didn't
now.
have to read fucking, Ready Player One. I didn't have to read that, so
Oh, yeah.
having a
dang.
good time over here.
You should read it. That should be your homework. You need to read Ready Player One.
No, that's okay. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Well, anyway, was there anything you liked, anything I liked about it? Because you liked the whole book. Well, most of the book. You liked a lot of the book.
Yeah.
I didn't
mean,
like-
I would say my silver lining was that it was a silly, like, I honestly, I don't want to, like, talk shit about it too much because, well, too late for that. Honestly, like, it was, to me, it was kind of silly, but it was very, like, it was what you'd expect out of a vampire Regency romance novel. Like, there was a lot of,
Yeah, the title
like,
should have tipped me
that's
off.
the whole appeal for a lot of people with that time period, is that it's like, ooh, all the sexual tension, no sex sort of thing. So that not necessarily that you don't like the sex, but just the sexual tension gets like real ramped up. And that's the same thing in a lot of vampire novels, which I think is kind of dumb that vampires in a lot of vampire romance novels can't fuck a human or whatever. They come up with bullshit reasons for that, but like, that's what's going on here. Is there's just a lot of longing, a lot of sexual tension. So if you're like into that, this is the book for you, because it's a lot. Like, not much happens, but like, oh well, who cares? Like, doesn't matter. There's a lot of like I said, heaving bosoms and staring longingly at necks. So if you're into that, this will tick a lot of boxes for you.
And it seems like, yeah, it seems like if you do read this and like this, and there's a lot for you to go off of. I'm just looking here at the Goodreads recommended.
Yeah,
there's
it's
Vampire,
a whole
Darcy's
subgenre.
Desire, Emma and the Werewolves, Emma and the Vampires,
Yeah.
Jane Bites Back. Oh, this is interesting. Robin Hood and Friar Tuck, zombie killers.
Oh, see, I feel like that's not going to be a lot of sexual longing for the zombies, though.
That's true. Oh, Little Women and Werewolves.
Mm.
Little Vampire Women. Romeo, Juliet, Vampires. Okay, anyway. So there's a lot for you to explore here at your leisure.
Public domain vampires is like very much a genre that exists.
Tea time. Can we write a book called Public Domain Vampires?
Yes.
Okay, no one steal that book title. That's our book title.
Copyright.
Copyright. I already have a copyright right now. I bought it. Anyway. Excellent. Oh my god. Well, okay, so I guess my silver lining was I kind of liked some of the vampire friends. They were cool. I like Sophia.
Yeah, they were fun. Yeah.
I like Giuseppe.
I mean, they didn't do much, but they were there.
They seem like cool people to hang out with and have like suck my blood and turn me into a vampire.
Kind of to my point that this probably shouldn't have been called Mr. Darcy Vampire. It should have just been some guy vampire, and like we should have dropped the whole Pride and Prejudice thing.
Yes, I would have liked that.
She can come up with characters. She's fine at that. And honestly, they wouldn't have annoyed me so much if they weren't pretending to be Elizabeth and Darcy, because they aren't.
Well, she might have been able to give them more of a personality too.
Yeah, and like Darcy, to me, like the appeal of Darcy in Pride and Prejudice and most good Pride and Prejudice like adaptations and retellings that I've read or seen, like, is that he is a huge introvert nerd who does not know how to like deal with humans. Like that the whole Elizabeth thinks he's very prideful, and it's not that. It's that he is a huge nerd who does not do well in large groups. Like, that's the best reading of Darcy, in my opinion. And that's not what's going on here. He was actually, like, a prideful asshole the whole time. And, like, like, that, so that bothered, like, I was just like, just don't make him Darcy. Make him some other guy. Like, he's fine.
Yeah.
You know, he's over here doing this, you know, sexual tension longing thing, which is why anybody who's reading this is here. But, like, why does he have to be Darcy? You're ruining Darcy for me.
Yeah, and we wouldn't even really have had to have that much background, because it could still just open with a wedding with these two people, and you could just given them more personality in their dialogue because you were too afraid to play with Elizabeth and Darcy as people. So, yeah, Sophia was cool. She had lots of clothes.
So, was that who you related to most, or?
No, I related to most were the servants who all quit because it was too much for them. It was me.
Yeah, fair. I think that would probably be my pick too, honestly. Like, I guess kind of Elizabeth. I mean, she was really the only one with like major personality in this, in that it was mainly. That's true. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna say I related to Jane most in that.
She was totally absent. Just a person everyone had heard of.
And everyone had heard of me, and actually, no, third. I'm gonna say Anne de Burgh, who shows up and is like,
oh yeah,
just fucking tell her what the problem was. Like,
yeah,
she's like, because Catherine de Bourgh's like, tell me where he is, Zai, and Anne's like, it just fucking tell her what's going on. Like, why are you doing
danger
this?
This
is
so
dramatic. No one needs this. Like, come on, let's move along here, please. Let's get to the plot.
Yeah, Anne's a solid choice.
Final answer.
All right. Yes. Good. There was a lot of options there, but I'm glad we settled on one.
Yes.
Oh man. Anything you'd rather be reading? Any other vampire novels you can recommend?
Well, not a vampire novel. Here's the thing. When I was reading this, I kept going through my head, and I'm like, oh man, I've got so many rather be readings this week. Not because I didn't like this book, just because it reminded me of a lot of stuff that I have read. You guys might be understanding from this episode that I have no taste. That's true.
I think that goes for both of us. Like,
if you still want recommendations from me. Okay, so I've got a couple that I like that in terms of Pride and Prejudice retellings, I guess. And there's a ton out there if you're into this genre that are pretty good. Like, obviously, kind of the most famous one would be like Bridget Jones's Diary is technically a Pride and Prejudice retelling.
Is it really? I did not know that. I did not pick up on that.
Yeah, yeah. Which is why it's extra funny. I mean, the character's name is Mark Darcy. Like, that's the guy she ends up with.
Oh, and he's played by what's his name?
He's played by... Yeah, exactly. Very cute. But, I mean, there's a book of that, too. I'm going to go with either Eligible by Curtis Sittenfeld, which is a modern-day Pride and Prejudice, which is set in Cincinnati, which is part of why I like it, because there's a lot of references to Cincinnati things, which is fun for me, because that's where I live.
Yeah.
Or Bernie Sue's The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet, which is the kind of novelization of Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was one of the kind of major YouTube series, and it was a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but set in modern times with vlogs and stuff like that. But the guy who wrote it and directed it, I think, but, you know, Bernie Sue, and also I think there's another author involved, which I can't remember, but we'll put in the show notes. But they wrote a kind of adaptation of this show that they had done, which was itself an adaptation of this book. So there's all the stuff that I like about adaptations, where there's 18 layers to it, and it kind of expands on the stuff that they couldn't really include in the show and things like that. So it's really fun if you've seen the show, or just like if you, I think it's like a pretty solid like retelling, modern day retelling of Pride and Prejudice, if you're into that sort of thing. And also there's like probably 20 other ones that I can't think of right now, but, you know, like hit me up and I'll give you some recommendations. How about you?
Yeah.
What would you rather be reading?
How about me? Well, I kind of went on a journey with this one a little bit, and I had to double check to make sure I didn't already recommend this book. I'm pretty sure I haven't.
Okay.
So I went on a bit of a journey with this one. I was like, well, I don't really want to recommend a vampire book, because I think the last vampire books I got super into were the Anita Blake books. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to go read Guilty Pleasures, the first book in the Anita Blake series. But
then stop around book 5.
Yeah, stop around book 5. Don't go any further. Or do and tell us. So then I was looking through the books I had read that I had marked as historical fiction, and I came across a series that it's kind of historical fiction, but mostly it's kind of like a science fiction steampunk sort of alternate reality. So honestly, it doesn't have anything to do with this book, but this is where my mind took me to, and it is a very good book. It's a good series. It is called The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman, which is the first book in the Invisible Library series. And it is about a woman named Irene who is a spy for an organization called a library, where she goes to different realities and she basically like harvests books from those realities to bring them back to the library to be kept for like all time, I guess. It's just like a library. So she gets a new assistant named Kai, and they are sent on an assignment to an alternate London that is like steampunky and kind of like the 1890s sort of feel to it. There's like a Sherlock Holmes type character and stuff, and there are also dragons.
Oh,
so it's really good. I would recommend. I love this series. I know it's not like Regency period, but you know, steampunk is
always
historical fiction-y.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So so nothing to do with Pride and Prejudice, or oops, I just pulled my headphone out. Nothing to do with Pride and Prejudice or vampires or Regency romances whatsoever. That's my rather be reading.
I was gonna say, you don't want anything to do with that after this book.
That's very true. Yeah. So maybe this is the right book for me to recommend to our listeners.
So that pretty much wraps it up for this fortnight. Before we get to what our next book will be, we did have a listener email that we wanted to read real quick. So let me pull that up. All right. I was recently suggested your podcast on my Stitcher homepage, and I'm so happy I decided to listen. Thank you for your fantastic summaries, which focus on the important content in each book, which may not be what the author always wants, but I personally love. Your chemistry is wonderful to listen to, and the hilarious commentary is easy to follow, even if I haven't read the book. You also informed me of the danger of shovel hands, the sexy phrase, knocking a few protons off the old hydrogen atom, and the existence of the terrifying wereswans. Thank you for your podcast, and I'm looking forward to your next book review, as well as the 12 Months of Christmas podcast. Plug, 12 Months of Christmas is up now. Keep up the great work, Emily.
Aw, thanks, Emily.
P.S. Have either of you read or are considering reading Moon People by Dale M. Courtney? It may be a good book to read for the podcast. My copy of the book is only 80 pages, so it is a very short read. And then there's a little spoiler, which I'm not going to read right now because it's a spoiler. Because all of you guys are definitely reading along, which you might have figured out that this is going to be our next book that we're going to read. Moon People by Dale M. Courtney, which was suggested to us by listener Emily. Thank you so much, Emily. First off, love the email so much.
Yes, thank you so much for your super sweet email.
It was very nice to read.
So sweet.
And yeah, we're going to go ahead and do Moon People for our next episode. So if you guys are reading along, that's going to be up next. The subtitle is The Age of Aquarius, so that's fun.
The Age of Aquarius.
And we hadn't really had, like, it wasn't really on our list, but I have seen it on many other people's list for, like, worst book ever written. So it should be an interesting read. And yeah, if you guys want to...
I can't even get through the synopsis. It's so long.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to read it right now. Because
like the book description?
It's very long and kind of confusing. So I'm not going to bother reading the synopsis on air. Hopefully we will be able to make something coherent out of the book.
Oh my god. They also have shields that are a liquid that turns into a solid mass as hard as 4 inches of steel when exposed to the cold of space. They also have a very elaborate and high-tech interior. They have a swimming pool.
Yeah.
I'm already loving this book so much. Thank you, Emily, for your suggestion.
Yeah, so that is next on the docket.
If you, dear listener, are presented with the option of whether or not to turn into a supernatural being that it turns out your significant other has secretly been all along, whether that be like vampire or shifter or mermaid, I don't know.
Yeah, those infamous
would you take them up
biting
on that
mermaids.
offer to... Yeah, well, you know... Maybe they get their gills on you. I don't know. If you... If you were presented with the choice of to become a supernatural being
that does
or
happen
for your significant...
Doesn't it?
I don't know. I never saw...
Spoiler for that happens in...
Hope y'all saw that already. Where was I? Okay. Here's the question.
Sorry.
If you were presented with the option of turning into the supernatural being of choice that your significant other has hiding that they are from you. Oh my god, I'm wording this so terribly. Would you choose to become the supernatural, or would you...
Vampire, yes or no? What you think?
Yeah. Obviously, you would pick the supernatural being, but let us know why you wouldn't if you're dumb. You can
do that by tweeting at us.
Yeah.
At HateReadcast on Twitter, or emailing us hatereadcast@gmail.com. And we might read your response on the air if it is fun. You can also do that if you have a suggestion for a book that you think we should read.
We would love that. And what do we say? Oh, as always, thanks to Ben Cope for the use of our theme song. And if you have not yet subscribed to us for some crazy reason, please do so on whatever platform you use to aggregate your podcast. And if it is iTunes, please feel free to leave us a wonderful 5-star review.
In the words of Amanda Grange, "Oh, Jane, if I could only tell you half the things that have happened to me since leaving Longbourn. There have been many difficult and frightening things in my life, but there has been much of great beauty, too. The dread and awful majesty of the Alps as Darcy and I rode over their snow-capped heights, the peaceful tranquility of Piedmont, the great river Brenta, with its weeping willows trailing their branches in the water, Venice rising like a dream from the lagoon, basking in the morning sunlight, ageless and timeless and serene, and the people, Philippe with his gallantry, and Gustave with his irrepressible good humor, and Sophia with her ancient dresses and her love for her city, and her memories, the rise of the merchant princes, the building of the palaces, the creation of the sculptures, the paintings and the poetry, the journeys of the great explorers, the triumphs of Marco Polo, with whom she spoke and danced. Yes, Jane, she knew him, and she still sings and dances, though he has long since turned to dust. She is the custodian of all things past, she and others like her, and my dear Darcy is a custodian too, a custodian, a guardian, and a protector, one of the timeless ones. My dearest Darcy is a vampire. Bitch, we read all this already. Get to the fucking point."
It goes on for so long.
Why did you have to recap the entire book?
Because clearly the readers are too stupid to realize. No, because it was like one of the last chapters of the book, and she was updating this weekly, and she didn't want her readers to forget what had happened in the first few chapters of the book when she uploaded all this to fanfiction.net. We had gone so many episodes
man.
without making any spousal abuse jokes.
I know. Will I cut this one? Who
Who
knows?
knows? It has been 0 days since Hate Read has made a spousal abuse joke.
We really need to stop.